Hi, everyone. Depending on when you watch this video, I hope you will have, are having, or have had a very good Labor Day long weekend. I want to get us started thinking about what we're going to be doing for week 2 in Writing 210. And our focus for this week is really on style and usage, looking at the nitty-gritty elements of the text and how that works and how that affects us as readers. So we're going to be spending some time talking about rules and the rules of language that shape what we're doing. So here's what we have in store. So this week, we're going to talk about the different perspectives on grammar and usage. And we'll also be exploring the relationship between usage and style. So these are all terms that we'll kind of discuss and define as we go through the week this week. So before class, I'd like you to do 3 readings. They're relatively short, but they're going to kind of introduce some kind of key perspectives in the discussion of language, grammar, and usage. So I'd like you to read Ben Yagoda's article, The Seven Deadly Sins of Student Writers. Read Damon Young's article, A Letter to the Man That Wrote Me to Correct My Grammar. And finally, read a chapter from Dreyer that is called Rules and Non-Rules. So those are the readings that we'll be discussing in class on Wednesday. So what's due this week? Same as last week, discussion boards. So there are 2 discussion boards that are posted in the week 2 folder. Make sure that you have those completed and respond to at least one other discussion board post by Sunday, September 10th at 11:59 p.m. So the key concept for week 2 is 2 approaches to grammar, kind of 2 different ways of viewing grammar and the values that are associated with that. So we know, as Holcomb and Killingsworth talked about, that grammar is the system and structure of language. But there are 2 different perspectives that that people who study language kind of take in relationship to grammar, how they kind of understand grammar as a rule. So the first perspective is called the prescriptive perspective, or prescriptivists. And these are people who believe that the rules of language are defined by previously agreed upon rules. So prescriptivists usually approach texts as either right or wrong, correct or incorrect. They assume that there is one correct way of writing and speaking. They tend to enforce cultural norms and adherence to those norms because of the rules. So they don't allow a lot of variance or experimentation with grammatical structure or rules. And prescriptivists genuinely believe that a sentence is grammatical if it conforms to a set of rules that grammarian believes should be followed. So if you have like the typical subject, verb, object pattern in an English sentence, that's following rules. But if you were to mix that up, then a prescriptivist would say that that's not grammatical and that it's not correct. So on the one hand, we have prescriptivists. On the other hand, we have descriptivists. And descriptive grammar, or descriptive people who kind of take this approach, really believe that rules of language are defined actually by how language is used rather than the specific rules that have sort of been passed down through history. So a descriptivist will try to understand the different ways that language are used. They'll be more tolerant of variances in dialect or usage. They'll very rarely acknowledge a sort of right or wrong answer, because if somebody is saying something, even if it's not technically grammatically correct according to a prescriptivist, but a reader or a listener still understands it, then it works. And so it is sort of, it makes sense, and it's an effective piece of communication. It's an effective piece of language or use of language. And so descriptivists are much more focused on sort of the usage of how things work. And they also finally believe that a sentence is grammatical if a native speaker of the language would produce that sentence. So it's not necessarily about these inherited rules, but rather the sort of how language is used and what is happening with the language as it's being used. And if it's being used, if it works, then it's grammatical. So these are sort of the two ideas that we'll be talking about, this idea of prescriptive and descriptive grammar. And so as you do these readings for Wednesday, I'd like you to think about how you would describe Yagoda's, Young's, and Dreyer's rhetorical situations. So kind of pulling back on that idea from week one about the rhetorical situation. So who is their audience? What is their message? And what is their subject position or expertise as writers? So it might help to do a little bit of research about, just do a quick Google search, look these people up in Wikipedia or somewhere else, just to kind of get a little background information on them. Second, think about what the main stated or unstated arguments of the author's essays are. And then also think about how you would describe each author's approach using these two terms, prescriptivist or descriptivist. If you were to categorize each of these authors into one of those categories, where would you place them? And then think about what evidence from the articles themselves helps you kind of categorize them that way. So those are the questions to think about. That's what I have for you today. So it's a shorter video for week two, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about these three writers and also where you would place yourselves on this continuum of descriptivist or prescriptivist. All right, I hope you all are doing well, and I will see you on Wednesday. But if you have questions in the meantime, you know how to get in touch. Bye.